From good old vanilla JavaScript sprinkled with jQuery websites to full-fledged hybrid apps, forms have been around and have always been a powerful tool. Regardless the language you're writing your stuff on, PHP, Ruby, JavaScript, what have you, forms are a way of defining and controlling your mutations in a way that any backend can receive. They're also the friendliest to progressive enhancement. So let's have a look on how to use them effectively with. Hi, I'm Attila. I work as a web developer and I've recently found myself with this newfound love for SolidJS and fine-grained reactivity. So this is actually a short series doing some work with it, creating an app with increasing functionality and playing around with the developer experience around it in a very user-centric way. So yeah, this is the second one and more are sure to come in the upcoming days. So hit that bell, like, and subscribe button for your own sake and my happiness. The last time we were here, we started actually coding a Markdown parser app. And now it's time to prepare to send those things up the wire. We want to persist nodes, but instead of simply persisting nodes in a common bucket, let's add authentication to it. And to get authentication working, we first need a login form. And only that is what we will build in this video. Obviously, there's a follow-up with a session storage, password encryption, and all that jazz. But let's keep it simple and solid for now. So here we are with our empty index page. And the first thing we need for our form is a callback, an action for that submission. Let's create an asynchronous function that we're going to call a login action. And for now, we're not returning anything. We're just declaring it because only that's already enough to get us started with the first SolidStart API that we're going to use. So we're going to create this login action. And this is actually returning an instance of a form component by calling the server action method, and this is gonna receive as a callback our login action. So this is returning this form component that's actually already hooked up to that action that we're just creating up here on line 3, and it's already giving us the status of the pending request that we're about to send. And as the name implies, it will always run on the server. It's not that different from what Remix and Next.js have been doing with forms as well. As a matter of fact, both SolidStart and Next.js have drank from Remix experience using forms. If you're familiar with it, you get a nice head start understanding and recognizing the patterns. So we have a form ready to be used, but we need 2 more pieces of data in order to create a consistent UX. Sometimes our users are going to try to access directly a protected route, and that may redirect them back to the login page if they don't have a session. A decent UX will redirect them back to where they wanted to go once they actually achieve a valid session. As in the old days, we can get that with a query param, and SolidStarts make it possible with a single line of code. We're going to have a redirect to that's going to be using the params. The params will get our search params from the URL and output them as an object. Also, we want our login to have 2 actual functionalities, login and registration. So let's allow the user to conveniently choose which action they want to perform by creating a signal that will send the type upwards the login action later. So we have a form type and we're going to create signal, and this is actually a generic. So I can say it's gonna either be login or register. By default, we want to login. So that's all good and ready, and we can actually start using those things now in our JSX. So back in our header, we can turn this header into an actual banner to which action the user is about to perform. So we're gonna take the form type, signal, charret, make it uppercase, and then the rest of our form type. Awesome. So now we have a login there, which means we can actually start replacing this and coding our form. So we're going to use that form that was brought to us by the instance. And let me just paste some tailwind classes so that form looks a little bit better. And now we're going to add a redirect to with a hidden input, and the value is going to be the one that's coming from the search params. If it's null or false in any way, we're going to use the default, the root. So now let's code this form action button so we can actually change from login to registration. It's mostly some JSX boilerplate, so I'm just gonna copy paste for now. So it's gonna be checked if our form type signal actually equals login. So we're going to have this hidden radio button. If triggered, it's gonna have the login. And then the label, which is the thing that's actually gonna be visible, has login, and the class is gonna be hidden if we are at a login state. Meanwhile, we have the same thing for the registered. So now I click, I switch over here and back. And now we can actually start coding the user inputs with a new field set. Now we have a few CSS classes over here, and then we have this legend that's only for the screen readers. And then inside this thing, we can create a label. And the label is going to be for my username, and then some classes over here. The label is going to say username, of course. So we can now create this input. And in this case, this input is just like a regular text input, but it could be an email in our case because our database will eventually get only an email. And then we repeat the same thing for our password input. So then we can have a password as well. This div actually closes up right after this one. So then we have a proper spacing. So now we have proper uncontrolled inputs. Good enough for now. So as the last thing we need in our form as our form components is the submit button. So the submit is going to take its name from the event we're about to say. So it takes the form type and capitalizes it again. So it says the proper call to action based on what the user is intending to do. But our form may look okay, but a form is not actually complete unless we have some error handling. So what we're going to do then is to import the form error helper from the SolidStart/data. And this is something we can throw at our login action later and can be caught on by our form component. So now we can add to our JSX some conditional rendering component from SolidJS, which is the show component. So in our username div, we're actually going to add right after our input, we are going to add the show, and we are going to show it when logging in has an error and the username. So with that, we can then add a paragraph, and we can say that the login in error, we take it from the field errors, and we are going to pass what's the message for username. This very same thing, we can actually take it all the way down here. So instead of username in this case, we're going to call password. And that's awesome. So now we already have error handling on our form UI. What we need to do is to validate. Awesome. So now we have error handling in our form UI. What we need to do is validate it. And to do that, we are going to bring on Zod. Zod is a TypeScript first schema validation with static type inference, as they say on their own docs page. So it's sort of exactly what we want, right? I made another quick video strictly about Zod, so be sure to check it out. As you're there, give it a like and all that stuff, right? Back to our code, we open up our /lib schema.ts, and because I enjoy keeping Zod stuff constrained in there as a single source of truth. We already have some schema validation there, as you can see, for what we're going to need later in our .environment variables. But let's save that one for our follow-up. What we're going to need today is actually two schemas. One of them is going to be the user login schema, that it's going to be a Zod object, and this object is going to take a username, and that string is actually going to be a special kind of string, which is an email. Then our password is the next part of our object. It's also going to be string, but that password is actually going to have a refine, which is a custom validator in this case. We're going to take this value that's going to be used as a password. And for now, just as an example, we're going to make sure it has 6 or more characters. If this refine fail, if it's falsy, then we are going to send a message that's going to be password must have 6 characters or more. So that's the first one we're going to do, which is the schema of whatever user input we're going to have. But then we also need a schema for the data that's going to be coming from our form, the whole data. And that one is actually going to take the user schema and extend it. So we don't hard code things more than once. We can extend one from the other, and then this one is going to be the login type. That's going to be a union of 2 literals. Then obviously we have the redirect to as well, and the default is going to be this. So every time we do the safe parse, we are going to, if redirect is undefined or of any other falsy value, Zod's gonna make sure it's actually the root. And that's it for now. We're exporting both of our schemas, so we are ready now to code our login action. So right here to the top of our file, we have login action that's gonna return a redirect, and this redirect comes from SolidStart server. Now let's add some logic to it. It's gonna receive a few parameters, the first one being a FormData, and then we're also gonna receive a context object, which for us, we only care about the request, which is going to be a standard request. Now we're going to take the form. We're going to call the for entries value because we're going to create an object from the form data we're receiving, and then we can actually parse it with Zod in this case. So we're going to take all the fields and turn it into and safe parse it as our user login schema. So if not all the fields are a success on the parsing, we just return no. Otherwise, we are going to take from every field, we are taking up the data. And now I just realized I parsed it wrong. Thanks Zod, because we're using the wrong schema, the login form schema at this point. And then we're going to have the login type and we're going to have the redirect. So with this, we are ready to then start coding our cases. Good old switch statement that's going to be receiving the login type to define which logic we actually need for it. And then in the case of a login, once we implement the auth and sign in, we're going to try to sign in, and then we can redirect the user somewhere. And now we have another case to code, which is the register case. And then again, in this case, create the user, and then once the user is created, it's going to be automatically sign in, and then go inside. And so now we're ready to test our apps. So if the field parsing is no success, we're going to create this error data, and we're going to iterate through all that errors from Zod and throw the form error with a message, whatever. But what we're actually going to be looking at is the field errors, and we're going to print out the data there. So that's going to happen actually before we reach all that switch case and everything else, because we're still going to implement on the next video. So at this point, I can follow my placeholder actually that's already going to get me in trouble. And here I'm just going to pass a password that's less than 6 characters. As I press login, we go to our server action, throws the new form error that's coming from the SolidStart helper, and it's picked up by our app. And that was it. That's how you do forms in SolidStart. And that was it to build a form with SolidStart. I hope you have enjoyed it. And on your way out, be sure to leave a like and subscribe and turn on the bell button, so you can get notified when we implement authentication and authorization. This series is likely becoming a 4 to 5 videos, just so we can keep each one of them nice and concise. So I hope to catch you on the next one. And meanwhile, you can check whatever the algorithm thinks it would be nice for you to watch somewhere, maybe in front of my face. I don't know. So see ya. Bye.